This hour, from another historic summit with North Korea to the political crisis rocking Venezuela. And President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence getting right into the thick of things on the world stage this morning. Welcome back to America's Newsroom. I'm Sandra Smith.
Sandra, good to be with you this morning. And good to be with you. I'm Eric Shawn in for Bill Hemmer. Well, the Vice President, Mr. Pence, is wrapping up his sit-down with Juan Guaido. He is the opposition leader that is backed by the U.S. and 50 other nations. They recognize him as the interim president of Venezuela, just as President Trump is now getting ready to leave about an hour from now for Hanoi, Vietnam. That, of course, where there's a lot at stake ahead of his second face-to-face sit-down meeting with dictator Kim Jong-un. The president speaking to reporters ahead of talking with our nation's governors moments ago.
The United States has been crucial. The sanctions, the support, the humanitarian aid that has brought to the Venezuelan people. But it is time for action. And the action, as all the options are on the table, are very concise and very precise.
And the fact that the vice president himself is going to meet with the leaders of the opposition is incredibly significant. Kind of lets the whole world know what's at stake here and who are the good guys, who are the bad guys.
Let's go live now to our very own Rich Edson, live at the White House this morning as the president is expected to depart shortly. Rich, good morning.
He is, Sandra, and this is the vice president has just landed in Colombia amid a political crisis, an economic crisis, and violence in neighboring Venezuela. The White House says the vice president will meet with the opposition leader and the interim president, Juan Guaido, along with dozens of other countries, leaders from them that are focused on addressing the issues and leadership in Venezuela. This weekend, Guaido organized...
Rich Edson at the White House for us this morning. Thank you.
We will obviously subpoena the report. We will bring Bob Mueller in to testify before Congress. We will take it to court if necessary. And in the end, I think the department understands they're going to have to make this public.
Well, that's House Intelligence Committee Chairman Democrat Adam Schiff saying that he will not only subpoena the special counsel if he has to, but also warns that he is ready to sue to make the highly anticipated Robert Mueller report public. This amid all the widespread reports that the special counsel is finally near the end of the Russia investigation. Griff Jenkins live in Washington with much more on what we can expect. Hi, Griff.
Hey, Eric and Sandra, the chairman's threats of subpoena testimony and lawsuits are really raising more questions than simply when are we going to get this report, such as what will the size and scope of this be, and can the chairman compel Mueller to testify beyond the contents of the report if he believes that something was buried or excluded or not released to Congress or the public? For example, if obstruction of justice were not covered or is redacted in the report, can Mueller be forced to answer questions about it? That's unclear at this point. What we do know is this. Under DOJ regulations, a special counsel is required to submit a confidential report to the Attorney General. Then, Attorney General Barr will have wide discretion over what he chooses to release publicly. And Schiff says it's in Barr's interest to be forthcoming.
If he were to try to withhold, to try to bury any part of this report, that will be his legacy, and it will be a tarnished legacy. So I think there will be immense pressure not only on the department, but on the Attorney General to be forthcoming.
Barr is also required to issue a summary of Mueller's findings to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham and Ranking Member Dianne Feinstein, and Chairman Graham says this should be the end of it.
Well, I think Mueller is going to be the person most people listen to, not Adam Schiff. The Mueller report will be out soon. If there is no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian intelligence community, then that should be the end of all this. I've seen no evidence of collusion.
Meanwhile, the president's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, begins testifying on the Hill, both privately and publicly, tomorrow. Eric?
All right, Griff,
Sandra?
there is certainly a lot this week. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Griff. Well, a busy morning. Let's get to our A-team. David Avella, chairman of GOPAC, joins us. Marianne Marsh, former senior advisor to John Kerry, and Tom Bevan, co-founder and publisher of Real Clear Politics. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning, guys.
What a Monday morning this is. What a week this is going to be for the president, the vice president on the world stage today. Let's start first with North Korea. Big expectations heading into this summit. What can the president walk away with here?
The president has to walk away with North Korea showing real evidence of not having a nuclear program. Let's keep in mind that North Korea is one of the countries that's not in the World Nuclear Treaty and how nuclear power is going to be used. They're not part of that treaty. So there has to be real evidence continuing to be shown that that's going away. And the president is pushing to go a different path and make something happen by showing the leader of North Korea that there's a better path economically than what he is doing right now, putting all of his eggs in the basket of China. And if we're ultimately going to get a deal, it's because he decides that he can get a better economic deal out of the United States than what he's been getting out of China.
Very interesting. Marianne?
Well, the only thing worse than the first meeting between Trump and Kim is the second meeting between Trump and Kim.
Hold on, it hasn't happened yet, Marianne.
The plane's taking off. They're on their way to Hanoi. Hemmer's already there. Kim's done nothing to earn it. That's the problem since the last meeting. Remember, no president of the United States had ever met with the leader of North Korea until Donald Trump met with Kim. And now he has a second meeting and has done nothing to earn it.
Well, he would say that's a success in itself. That he's been able to
you are elevating Kim on the world stage and conferring upon him that he is a leader, the likes of which other countries we deal with, and he's done nothing to earn it. He's a murderous dictator who covets nuclear weapons, and he's done nothing to denuclearize
But Marianne, do you expect him that he will finally give something at this summit?
I hope so, but I'll be shocked because Trump has given him everything and gotten nothing.
Hold on. So here's Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Tom, I'll bring you in on this one, on the prospects of this North Korean summit. Listen.
Test, pray, and cower has been upended by President Trump. We've put real economic pressure on the North Koreans. We've built out a global coalition. One of the critiques is that we go it alone. We've built out the world's coalition to communicate to Chairman Kim that now is the time, now is the moment, and I hope we'll make real progress on that this week.
That sets up for a big meeting.
Sure. I would disagree with Marianne. I mean, part of Trump's rationale for this is we've been doing the same thing with North Korea for 20 years, multiple administrations of different parties, and gotten nowhere. So why not try something different? And the idea is it's better to be talking than not to be talking. And Pompeo is right. They have built out, they put on sanctions, which Trump says he's not going to give up. So I think there is a chance, even if Trump walks away with nothing from this meeting, nothing new. There has been no nuclear testing. There hasn't been no ICBM testing from North Korea. And he'll continue the conversation. And by the way, the public approves of the way Trump's handling the situation with North Korea. They'd rather see us talking to them as opposed to isolating ourselves.
Well, Marianne brings a point about he's a murderous dictator. How about human rights? That's been swept under the rug a bit. You got Otto Warmbier, the young American who authorities and a federal judge said was forced into a false confession, tortured and executed, basically murdered by the North Koreans.
Correct.
Here's a little give. Prosecute his killers. Wouldn't that be something that would be cost-free to Kim Jong-un?
There are many things he could do, and no other president has ever met with any leader of North Korea. His father and his grandfather and he himself have all been murderous dictators who starved their people. He makes Maduro look like a Boy Scout, and Maduro is no Boy Scout. So you have to ask what we're getting in return. He uses this for propaganda at home to elevate himself and punish his people further.
But is that an excuse not to engage somewhat?
Get something, and we have gotten nothing.
Okay, well, it hasn't happened yet. A reminder, the president hasn't even taken off yet. I'll do so in a couple of hours. But here is the president in his own words in a tweet ahead of his departure. He said this: meeting for breakfast with our nation's governors, then off to Vietnam for a very important summit with Kim Jong-un. With complete denuclearization, North Korea will rapidly become an economic powerhouse. Without it, just more of the same. Chairman Kim will make a wise decision. The president before his departure.
It goes to what we were just talking about. And economic is key here. The leader of North Korea needs to see a better path economically. And we have all referenced this. His family has been in power for a very long time. They're not going to just change the way they operate if they don't see a better economic path. And that's where the president, who does have a strong record, particularly here in the United States, and helping to make economic growth occur, is saying to the leader, Kim Jong-un, follow me. Look, I can show you a better way economically to provide for not only your family, but also the people of your country.
But he starved 1 million or 2 million of his own people. He has gulags and concentration camps. Are we talking about economic survival for his people? He doesn't care about his people or for his own regime.
Eric, we should be pushing all for human rights. There's no question about that. But there's a lot of dictators that our country has had to deal with over the years. I mean, you think about the terrible deals that we gave to Iran, that the Obama administration gave to Iran, that we practically gave them the store that John Kerry and his allies gave away. There are bad people that we have to deal with. Would we rather not? Absolutely, we'd rather not. But right now, for America's economic security or national security, having a denuclearized North Korea is in our interest.
All right, Marianne, what about John Kerry? You just had to mention that.
Look, under the Trump administration, the bar is so pitifully low to be able to get a meeting with Donald Trump, especially this week when you're trying to distract from Michael Cohen and others. We'll see if that works. But the reality here is we hold none of them accountable. And this is what I question is, how can you meet with Kim when Trump embraces Putin and Erdogan and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia? All of them are guilty of this.
Final thoughts on that, Tom, and we'll move on to Venezuela.
Yeah. Real quickly, though, Marianne, I'll go back to the point I made earlier. Madeleine Albright clinked glasses with the previous administration. Under Bill Clinton, they tried the carrot approach, and they got completely swindled. George W. Bush tried the isolationist approach. We won't talk to them. We're not going to give them any recognition whatsoever, and we got nowhere. So Trump's trying something new. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But I think it's not necessarily fair to say just because he's doing this that he's somehow it's unprecedented, it's unacceptable.
Leave it there on North Korea. A weekend of unrest in Venezuela. Secretary Mike Pompeo went on Fox News Sunday and said this.
We're very hopeful in the days and weeks and months ahead, the Maduro regime will understand that the Venezuelan people have made its days numbered. We've said every option's on the table. We're going to do the things that need to be done to make sure that the Venezuelan people's voice, that democracy reigns, and that there's a brighter future for the people of Venezuela.
Next steps for the administration in Venezuela.
Continue pushing to have a democratically elected leader. The issue it is for Venezuela. And let me just say, in 2020, this can only help President with Hispanic voters as he continues to reach for democracy.
The news is moving fast this morning. We've got to leave it there. Our A-team will be back. Tom, Marianne, and David, we'll see you in just a moment. Meanwhile, on to this.
We have a Fox's Alert, the Vice President, as we've been reporting, in Colombia to tackle the Venezuelan crisis that we've been talking about head on. In moments from now, he will be face-to-face with the opposition leader, Juan Guaido, who's backed by the U.S. and 50 other nations. He's also set to not only meet with him, but also perhaps strategize on the next steps against Maduro. We'll bring you that report live as we get it.
Plus, brand new comments from President Trump on China and trade. As we hear, there could be a big breakthrough in the trade war. Charles Payne is on deck as the market rallies.
And a bipartisan group of lawmakers where they're fighting for more money for the families of 9/11 victims and all those first responders who got sick. They have a big advocate with them who has a big megaphone. We'll bring you that. Jon Stewart ahead, up next, right here, as along with a demolition supervisor who suffered a serious injury as a result of the work at the World Trade Center site. We thank them both. Stay with us for that segment.
Juan Guaido, the Colombian president, meeting with our vice president. There you can see him on the right-hand side of your screen now, Mike Pence. He arrived there just a short time ago, this following a weekend of unrest in Venezuela, meeting with the Colombian president and obviously Juan Guaido. Any news from this will bring that to you. That meeting continues in Colombia. And later on the Hill, by the way, we will have more on that. Turning to a story that we've been telling you about this morning, the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund running out of money. Today, hundreds of first responders, survivors, and families will be marching in Washington. They're pushing for full compensation for everyone suffering illnesses as a result of exposure to toxins during the weeks of sifting through the rubble at the World Trade Center site. A group of bipartisan lawmakers set to introduce the Never Forget the Heroes bill, calling for a quick yes vote. Jon Stewart's a comedian and former host of The Daily Show on Comedy Central, and John Feal is a 9/11 responder. Both are longtime advocates of 9/11 workers who were sickened while working at the site following the terrorist attack. Jon Stewart and John Feal are our headliners today as they join us from Capitol Hill. Good morning to you both, gentlemen. Thank you for coming on the program this morning. And Jon Stewart, I know that you're joining us to give them an even bigger voice. What's your message this morning?
If we can. Well, you know, as I'm listening to the feed, I see there's a tremendous amount of news happening. There's an awful lot going on, and it's very hectic. And we don't want the 9/11 community and the first responders to have their issue be
going to expose them.
Jon Stewart, I know you published an opinion piece this morning talking about the need for funding this bill, what 9/11 heroes need from Congress. In that piece, you talked about walking the halls of Congress with the injured and ill 9/11 responders and survivors. And you said in that piece that you were looking to see if remembering 9/11 is more than a cheap obligatory slogan senators and representatives tweet out. What did you find?
You know, I think there's an inevitability to this process. Unfortunately, you know, John's been through this for over 18 years. After 9/11, 9/11 responders had to fight to get people to believe that they were actually sick. 9-10 months, disrupting their lives as well. We can't force them to have to fight for this anymore. We have to grant them, look, I know Congress is a bastion of fiscal responsibility, as you can tell from the marble and gold rotunda that we're standing in. They've got to understand, in the larger scheme of things, this is not a lot of money. But what it will do for these families is enormous. This is a national embarrassment and crisis.
John,
and they've got to step up.
If I could ask John Field, why has it been such a fight? I mean, this is a bipartisan effort. What we're seeing introduced today: Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Chuck Schumer, Cory Gardner, Carolyn Maloney, Jerry Nadler, Pete King. There are Democrats and Republicans involved here. So why has it been such a fight to make this funding permanent?
Well, you know, one, out of sight, out of mind. We're 18 years later. You know, many people have moved on since 9/11, but for those affected by 9/11, this is the longest day that hasn't ended for us. But as for elected officials, I can't speak for all of them. Usually it's because of tribal loyaltism or bad politics and poor leadership. But I think by the time we get done over the next few months, that we'll have a bill ready to vote on, that Republican leadership will agree with Senator Gillibrand, and hopefully that they make this permanent. You know, we compare our bill to the nuclear bill and the black lung bill that are permanent, and geographically they help people in different parts of the country. But the James Zadroga Health and Compensation Act, we're asking for permanent status on the VCF, just like on the health care. That's national. We dwarf them in size. 434 out of 435 congressional districts were represented at Ground Zero, and about 90,000 people are in the World Trade Center Health Program. Another 20,000 are waiting to be compensated for their illnesses and injuries. So Congress, again, needs to sense our urgency, and they have a chance to do the right thing. It's that simple.
And the program exists. It's not like this has to be built up from scratch and they've got to work through all the bugs of it. The program exists. It's been functioning beautifully. The Justice Department and the Special Paymaster have really done a great job of streamlining the bureaucracy and going through these claims and credentialing them in a really, really good manner. All they've got to do is refill the card, just refill the debit card, so that these families aren't going to see their awards cut by up to 70%.
I think Congress can no longer put an arbitrary date or a date on legislation anymore. These cancers and these respiratory illnesses, they have no dates. Everybody's immune system's different, and the latency period is different for these illnesses. Stop giving us 5 years here, giving us 5 years there. We're asking for 72 years to coincide with the World Trade Center Health Program. That's what we got in 2015 when we got 75 years. Now we have 72. So we want 72 years on the VCF. It's that simple. Anything short of that is a failure.
John Stewart, how did you get involved?
I lived in Lower Manhattan, so I was sort of involved from the get-go. But in 2010, we had heard that there was this health bill, James Zadroga health bill, and I knew James's story of how he had gotten sick and passed away, and they had found glass and mercury in his lungs, which was part of the atomized. You know, this was the Twin Towers were atomized and turned into particles, and there were fires down there. And those guys worked down there, ate down there, breathed everything in. So it was clear that they were going to face some challenges and some sicknesses, but for some reason we couldn't move the government. So I found that in 2010, when they were first putting the bill on there, they weren't going to do it, and I contacted John Field. And once you contact John Field, you become an admirer of his for life and an obedient servant. And so through his leadership, I was able to get involved in a small way and turn a spotlight on things that in some ways were being swept under the rug. And we've stayed close since. And I honestly can't believe that we're still in this position. You know, a lot of the men and women that we brought down here early on and that John has been with, they're no longer with us. Yeah. And those are names that go up on John's Memorial Park out in Wisconsin. But, you know, it's a tragic situation.
John's being humble, but John has a role to play, and he's got a very large audience. But so does Fox News. Yes. And I'm imploring Fox News to continue telling this story and continue to tell people across the country of the 9/11 responders in every state and almost every congressional district that need this help.
It really helps. It actually really does make a difference.
We absolutely hear you, and we love and support our nation's heroes. You're out there fighting for them. We appreciate you and what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Jon Stewart and John Field, appreciate your time this morning. New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is set to introduce the Never Forget the Heroes bill later today. She's also formed a 2020 exploratory committee, though she has not yet formally launched a presidential campaign. Senator Gillibrand will be speaking with our very own Chris Wallace tonight on Special Report. That's tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time right here on the Fox News Channel. California Senator Kamala Harris pushing for the Green New Deal over the weekend.
Being practical recognizes that greenhouse gas emissions are threatening our air and threatening the planet, and that it is well within our capacity as human beings to change our behaviors in a way that we can reduce its effects.
Now the Democratic hopeful is facing backlash for her comments. We'll tell you why just ahead. Plus, political chaos growing in Virginia as embattled Democratic Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax sparks outrage with some of his recent rhetoric. Our A-team is back on all of this and more next.
If we go backwards and we rush to judgment and we allow for political lynchings without any due process, any facts, any evidence being heard, then I think we do a disservice to this very body in which we all serve.
Florida. That statement reads, quote, "Our personal conduct policy applies equally to everyone in the NFL. We will handle this allegation the same way we would handle any issue under the policy. We are seeking a full understanding of the facts while ensuring that we do not interfere with an ongoing law enforcement investigation. We will take appropriate action as warranted based on the facts."
There's no question we have to be practical. But being practical also recognizes that climate change is an existential threat to us as human beings. It's not about a cost, it's about an investment. And then the question should be, is it worth the cost in terms of the investment potential? Are we going to get back more than we put in?
That's Democratic presidential hopeful Kamala Harris on concerns over the price tag for proposals like the Green New Deal and Medicare for All. The California senator saying that they address issues that we cannot afford to ignore. Peter Doocy now from Capitol Hill Live. So, Peter, does the senator have an estimate on exactly how much all that could cost?
No estimate yet, and we don't know when we might get it, Eric, but it sounds like it would be June at the earliest because Senator Harris says that she wants to have a debate on the debate stage about the cost of this, and that's not going to happen until June.
We have folks that are suggesting that we should buy science fiction instead of science fact. And we have got to correct course on this. It is an imminent issue requiring our priority, which is why I am supporting the resolution on the Green Deal.
And the cost of the Green New Deal is the one part of it that Democrats seem to get defensive about. Senator Cory Booker told me that it's a lie when critics say that it might be too expensive, but he and all the other 2020 Democrats are going to have a chance to go on the record with their support because Mitch McConnell plans to bring the resolution up for a vote in the Senate sometime very soon, potentially in the next couple days.
All right, and Peter, besides Senator Booker, what are the other Democrats saying about this?
That basically you have to spend money by tearing down every structure in the United States so that it is eco-friendlier to save money and then eventually save the planet.
If we spend money building here in America, that helps our economy. And at the end, when we build a new building, we got a new building, right? No, but this is important. When we spend money upgrading our buildings so they don't use as much energy, we have a more valuable building.
Warren today also took the extraordinary step of promising not to host any in-person fundraisers with wealthy donors. She explained that just because somebody is rich and they write her a big check, they will not get special access to her or special seating at VIP events.
Oh,
Eric.
Well, those big bucks guys will be kind of mad at that. All right, Peter, thank you.
Thanks, Peter. More on this with our A-team. I told you they'd be back. There he is, David Avella, Marianne Marsh, and Tom Bevan. So, David, it's interesting to hear how those who have come out and publicly support the Green New Deal say we're going to pay for it, or it's an investment. Which is it?
The bigger question is, talking about paying for it, is what cost are Democratic candidates willing to put on China, the world's biggest polluter, on climate change? If they really want a Green Deal, if they really want to tackle this climate change, you can't do it without getting some buy-in from China. And what level of sanctions, what levels of tariffs are Democratic candidates willing to put on China to make them change their ways? Otherwise, it's just a big redistribution of economics. And let's keep in mind, folks, in 2009, with President Obama's Green Deal, which got us Solyndra, we ultimately were led to a huge Republican wave in 2010. So allow the Democrats to continue down the Green Deal path.
We talk about the cost, but we can't really talk about the specifics because there aren't a lot. We don't really know how they plan to accomplish the goals that this lays out.
Well, we're starting to see some of that. I mean, just to David's point here, I mean, Donald Trump did pull us out of the climate treaty, but I digress. The fact is, Dianne Feinstein is putting together legislation that takes Ocasio-Cortez's resolution, which has precious little details there, and putting details to it. So I think we are going to see some real legislation there and some real effort to put this together.
What do you think will be in it?
Well, look, I give Ocasio-Cortez the credit for sparking the debate. I mean, she got a lot of attention to an issue that has been dormant for at least 2 years now. But it's someone like Dianne Feinstein and others who really need to put the details together to do it. And I think Ocasio-Cortez would be better served if she worked with someone like Feinstein to put a real legislation together with real details, real plans, real dollars together to get something passed and really change things than just using social media to talk about it and not get something done.
Well, in case you missed it, AOC then, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, then took on Dianne Feinstein over the weekend in this online bit. Watch.
The issue's gotten worse. So I don't think that working on an issue for 30 years alone is what qualifies, is what makes someone qualified to solve an issue. That said, there are a lot of people that have been doing this work for decades, that have proposed ambitious solutions for years and have not been listened to.
Tom?
She also said in that Instagram post that people should consider not having children because that also represents a threat to the planet. Listen, give Ocasio-Cortez credit for sparking the debate, but it's not necessarily, it's a debate that's going to cause a schism within the Democratic Party. She's taking swipes at members of her own party. She's saying climate delaying is the same as climate denying. So this is something that's going to be hashed out in the primaries in 2020 and also in Congress with Nancy Pelosi. But it's not necessarily a great development for Democrats. And I always look at all these issues. How do these issues play in the 7 states that are going to matter in 2020, right? The Midwest, right? Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Florida. Outside of that, it doesn't really matter.
Well, they're already fighting each other. Here's what Dianne Feinstein said, basically, when she met with this group of kids in San Francisco.
You know what's interesting about this group is I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what I'm doing. You come in here and you say it has to be my way or the highway. I don't respond to that. I've gotten elected. I just ran. I was elected by almost 1 million vote plurality. And I know what I'm doing. So, you know, maybe people should listen a little bit.
So, Marianne, how did Dianne and Alexandra, can they get together on this?
Well, I think when you watch the entire tape, Dianne Feinstein does much better. Here's the challenge for Ocasio-Cortez. Do you want to be more like Bernie Sanders, who over a 30-year career has only passed 1.8% of all the legislation he's ever introduced and talks a lot but gets nothing done? Or do you want to be more like Dianne Feinstein, who has passed some of the most landmark legislation in our country, going back to the days when she was in San Francisco City Hall, holding Harvey Milk after he was assassinated.
David?
We can't allow Marianne off on those platitudes. We know what's in this. We know what's in this Green Deal. This is getting rid of fossil fuels. This is about the only people that get to fly private are Bernie Sanders, who demanded out of the Clinton campaign that he get